Taking shock value further than anyone not named Marshall Mathers, Tyler has since experienced one of the most impressive artistic arcs we've ever seen. Playing a major role in revitalizing the West Coast hip-hop scene, Tyler and the Odd Future crew popped off in the LA area right at the start of the 2010s. Since then, he's been at the forefront of the Odd Future clothing line, the co-creator of the hit show Loiter Squad, and even headlines his own annual Camp Flog Gnaw Carnival, making its first return since 2019. Winning back-to-back Grammys for Best Rap Album with Igor and Call Me If You Get Lost, Tyler is now renowned as one of rap's most accomplished and innovative voices. See how that came about as we jump right in. Number 6, Goblin. Like most of the people watching this ranking, our first introduction to Tyler was the unsettling video that went with his breakout hit Yonkers. Since then, we've been along for the ride, watching him mature and grow with each project. That maturation wouldn't be possible without a baseline. This album is indeed that baseline. With 15 tracks and an astounding 74-minute runtime, Tyler's debut album is both his longest and most grotesque. With a reported 35% of the album's material focusing on shock and violence, there's very little room for the artistry we've come to love for him today. Producing 93% of the album himself, even Tyler would tell you this one has very little replay value over a decade later. The album would sell 45,000 copies its first week, good enough for a top 5 debut on the charts. The project would be met with generally positive reviews, which will attribute to its experimental nature. You know how hard it can be to critique something you've never experienced before? While we don't view this album highly when looking over his catalog, that's not to say there aren't elements we wouldn't revisit. Yonkers, She with Frank Ocean, and the 8-minute-long Odd Future posse cut window still remind us of vintage Tyler without feeling the need to explain yourself. At the end of the day, these knocks on the album are generally applicable to any artist putting out mainstream music at 20 years old. Shout out to him and that whole Odd Future crew. If it weren't for the crazy and creative nature of the collective, we never would have been introduced to artists like Frank Ocean, Earl Sweatshirt and Sid, or the spin-off group The Internet, which spawned breakout artist Steve Lacy. I guess the shock value was worth it. Let us know down in the comments what tracks you still got in rotation off this one. Number 5, Wolf. Even more emotionally charged than its predecessor, Wolf starts planting the seeds of vulnerability and transparency that blossomed on Flower Boy. Tearjerkers like Answer, Iffy, and Lone give context to Tyler's rebellion, allowing casual listeners to see more of his nuance, while loyal fans get a deeper insight into the troubles that plagued him away from the music. Here we get more of Pharrell's influence on Tyler's style and sound, with the mentor turned collaborator even making an appearance on the album. Still prone to violence, Tyler shares more glimpses of horror on tracks like Pigs and Rusty, this time serving as additional elements rather than the primary focus. This new alter ego of his, Wolf Haley, would set the precedent of captivating album rollouts for years to come. Seeing bumps in both units sold and Billboard placement, the album would move 89K first week on its way to a number 3 debut. In an interview with Spin back in 2011, Tyler indicated an upcoming shift in sound, wanting to move on from the horrorcore label that he'd unwillingly been marked with for his previous 2 releases. This project is clearly the first step of many in changing that perception. Still doing the heavy work behind the boards, Tyler is accompanied by guest Erykah Badu, Pharrell, Frank Ocean, and the rest of his Odd Future cohorts. We even get a feature from Earl on the standout album cut Rusty. We got to give a special shout out to Erykah Badu and Coco O. If it weren't for their Tree Home 95, we doubt we'd get future catalog staples like, well, hold that thought. Number 4, Cherry Bomb. Tyler's third studio LP is an ambitious fusion of hip-hop, rock, jazz, and soul. Chaotic in the truest sense of the word, the project's clash of sounds and ideas is no better embodied than on the title track Blow My Load, 2-Seater, and Pilot. Cherry Bomb is a conceptual leap of faith from start to finish. When we mentioned catalog staples made possible by Tree Home, we were talking about Find Your Wings. The collab we never knew we needed, Tyler and Roy Ayers gives us some of the best blends of jazz and hip-hop since some Kanye samples a decade earlier. Features from Charlie Wilson, Pharrell, Schoolboy Q, and Kali Uchis take listeners down a roller coaster ride that even day one Tyler fans haven't experienced before. We've yet to mention one of our favorite album cuts of the 2010s, Smuckers featuring Wayne and Kanye in rare form, joining forces officially for the first time since Forever in '09. Cherry Bomb would receive reviews along the lines of his preceding projects, but the ear test would initially be misleading. Admittedly, we weren't big on this album when it first dropped, but after repeated listens and some time to appreciate its impact, clearly this was Tyler's musical coming out party. Showing audiences he would no longer be boxed into labels like hip-hop or rap, Tyler completely shatters the idea of a comfort zone. No, the album isn't perfect. It can be a bit abrasive and experimental on tracks like Death Camp and Keep the O, flows, but it never strays from his overarching vision for the project. Number 3, Igor. Following the sonic exploration of Cherry Bomb and Flower Boy, Igor is a clear departure into atmospheric pop. This would be a controversial point as the Grammys would nominate and award it for Best Rap Album, despite Tyler's emphasis on alternative melodies and sounds. Telling the story of a disfigured love triangle between protagonist Igor and his male love interest, the album's conceptual execution is some of T's best work to date. His 5th studio album would be his first to top the charts, selling 165,000 units in its first week, to much dismay from the We the Best label head. A quick glance at the track list shows an omission of features, however. Listeners will be pleasantly surprised to hear vocals from Playboi Carti, Lil Uzi, Solange, and Kanye, with reoccurring narration from Gerard Carmichael. Igor continues Tyler's sole production streak of 4 consecutive albums, with his chops behind the boards more refined and innovative than ever. There's plenty of solid cuts on here. Make sure you check out Running Out of Time, A Boy Is a Gun, and Are We Still Friends, along with Earthquake, which would be his highest charting single, landing just outside the top 10. Igor has been a project that's grown on us over time, but we still feel Tyler's strongest material is housed on the 2 albums we've yet to mention. Number 2, Call Me If You Get Lost. Following the bittersweet critical acclaim and communal divide of Igor, Tyler and DJ Drama collab for Call Me If You Get Lost, Tyler's most conventional hip-hop album yet. By conventional, we're strictly talking labeling the sound. Obviously, Tyler and conventional is oxymoronic. Offering tracks like Hot Wind Blows, Juggernaut, and Lumberjack, Tyler's allegiance to hip-hop is clearer than ever before. Receiving even more critical and commercial acclaim, Call Me would be Tyler's 2nd consecutive chart-topping album, while grabbing him another Grammy for Best Rap Album. While we know the Grammys have a streaky track record at best, they hit the nail perfectly with this release, being the clear standout of its fellow nominees. Reuniting him with frequent collaborator Weezy F Baby, along with heavy hitters like Lil Uzi, 42 Doug, Youngboy, Pharrell, and Ty Dolla $ign, we also get a feature from Odd Future co-star Domo Genesis. The success of the project would reignite interest in the Gangsta Grill series, while giving Tyler arguably his 3rd classic in a row. It might be too early to call it, but we think back-to-back Grammys speak for themselves. Number 1, Flower Boy. Tyler's 4th studio album is a lot of things. Intuitive, introspective, visionary, but it's certainly not mainstream. Turning experimentation on its head, Flower Boy is part hip-hop, part alternative, and fully fleshed out. When examining the steps he took musically prior to this project, it would be more appropriate to title the album Emergence. The cocoon that was so carefully crafted up to this point is masterfully broken through multi-layered vocal patchworks, transparent storytelling, and ahead of its time subject material. The jazz elements first fully incorporated on Cherry Bomb are blended in perfectly on Pothole and Garden Shed. Alternative style approaches first introduced on Wolf get new iterations with See You Again and Boredom, while the contentious, borderline destructive delivery found on Goblin gets a touch-up with bangers like Who That Boy and I Ain't Got Time. Produced entirely by the creator himself, Flower Boy gets new listeners up to date on his catalog, while allowing the core fans to feel as if they're growing with him. This will be his first project to crack 100K in its first week, while notching him a then high number 2 debut. The album would earn him his first solo Grammy nomination for Rap Album of the Year. We just wish the collab he did with Wayne, Dropping Seeds, had about 3 more minutes tacked on. Isn't it crazy we get 2 separate appearances from Frank on here, but no album yet? Maybe that's another watermark of the album's classic status. Culturalists, it's been real. Let us know down in the comments what project first got you onto Tyler's music, and what order would you rank his 6 studio albums. Check out our other list here, and again, it's your man CJ Williams signing off for another one.